I'm Beck and welcome to a full spoiler recap for The Will of the Many of all characters and events before you read the sequel, The Strength of the Few. We follow Viz. He is 17 and an orphan and he's working at Laten's prison. He's doing this to save money and escape the hierarchy. Prisoners are detained in what's called a sapper and they leech will upon contact, channeling a person's drive, focus and mental and physical energy to a favoured Septimus. Religion, which is the third senatorial pyramid, runs the orphanages in the hierarchy. And then military and governance are the other two senatorial pyramids. Hospius, a visitor from military, comes to see a prisoner called Nateo and Viz escorts him. Hospius talks to Nateo in a dead language called Vetusian, which Viz happens to know from his parents' tutelage. They discuss VIDS, who may have landed Nateo in the sapper itself, and Siror, who left a message talking about a gate and a strange power from before the cataclysm. During their conversation, Nateo attempts to escape, but Viz puts a stop to it, his hands accidentally touching the sapper before he can wrench them away. Luckily, he's never ceded his will to the strength of the hierarchy before, so he doesn't have any effect from the sapper. Almost all children are brought to the Aurora Column when they are up to 12 years old, and they cede their will there to the pre-cataclysm artifact. And then after this, they can cede to anyone at any time. Viz covers, hoping Hospius didn't see him touch the sapper, and then he accepts coin from Hospius to lie about whether Hospius visited or not. So he wants to cover up his visit to the prison. Then Viz finishes his shift and he goes to the theatre, which is a fighting arena run by Eleanor. This time though, she's rigged his fight and he's going up against a sextus. In the hierarchy pyramid, a sextus has several septimi ceding to him, so he could potentially have the strength of 10 men. In their fight, Viz takes a graze to the shoulder, which knocks him down, and when his opponent's back is turned, Viz jumps him in a fit of rage. Viz knocks the sextus out and is dragged away from the fight. There's also been a girl that's watched every single one of Viz's fights in the theatre, and she keeps trying to talk to him but is unsuccessful. The next day at the orphanage, Ulkiskor Telemus visits. He is the same man from Laten's. Obviously his name is not Hospius, and he's looking for Viz. He's actually a Magnus, which is one of the most powerful men in the hierarchy. He's a senator, and the Senate is comprised of very powerful families. After 3 hours of essentially interrogating Viz in an interview, he chooses to adopt him. He intends to use Viz for his own purposes and train him up and send him to the academy. He's doing this to search for answers to a conspiracy involving his brother. The academy, or the Katanen Academy, is where children of senators and knights spend their last 18 months of childhood studying at the prestigious institute, and only powerful families get sent there. Ceding will at the academy is also forbidden. Ulkiskor and Viz take a transvect to the academy to enroll Viz, and a transvect is a will-imbued flying ship. On the way to the academy, it is attacked and partly destroyed. To stop themselves going down with the transvect in the crash, Ulkiskor and Viz jump, and they are only saved by Ulkiskor's power of will. They survive and they confront the 4 people that are raiding the transvect. Ulkiskor is shot with a stone-tipped arrow and falls passing out, which is unusual given his strength. And then Viz manages to defeat the rest in hand-to-hand combat. They reveal they're from the Anguis, which is a resistance to the hierarchy. Then a woman emerges from the trees. She is the one who shot Ulkiskor, and she calls Viz by his true name, Diago. Her name is Sodotia, and she's watched Viz at the theatre. It's the same woman. It turns out that she's from the Anguis as well, and they actually coordinated Ulkiskor and Viz meeting so that Viz would catch his interest because they want him to be placed at the academy. Only Sodotia and 1 or 2 others in the Anguis know of Viz's true identity, which is Diago, the Prince of Sus, which is a island that the hierarchy conquered 3 years ago. Viz refuses to work with the Anguis though, because to work for them, he knows that he would have to be placed high up in power and therefore give and receive or cede will, and he refuses to do that on principle. She gives him 1 month to meet with her again at the Namakea, which is a huge arena with gladiatorial combat at a festival, and instead of just sand at the arena, they have filled it with water and there's huge ships. It's a giant naval battle for spectacle of thousands of people in the crowd. It's also something that Ulkiskor probably wouldn't let Viz wander off to just see, so he's like, how would I even get there? Viz drags the unconscious Ulkiskor onto the remaining parts of the transvect and manages to fly it or program it to the academy, and before landing he passes out. He wakes in the infirmary to 3 curious students standing over him, Amissa, Indel and Belly. And then Viridius, who is the principalis of the academy itself, is the one who is there when he wakes up. He's disguising himself as a physician and he's asking Viz a whole bunch of questions about the attack. Ulquiskor interrupts them and collects Viz, and on the way out of the academy, he tells Viz that his brother's grave is nearby. He says his name is Siror, and we think he was killed to cover up whatever they're hiding. Ulquiskor also discusses the fortifications of the academy because it's basically impossible to break into. There is a sea wall that only a transfect at a certain point can cross. Ulquiskor also points out the ruins around the academy that he expects Viz to get out and explore. For the past 3 Judicia, which is like a competition or games at the end of the school year for the students to place in prestigious rankings, that entire section of the ruins in Solivigus, which is the island that the academy is on, has been off limits. Ulquiskor is convinced that religion is hiding something out there because religion are in charge of the academy itself. Now that Viz is enrolled, it's 3 months until the start of term, so he has to go back with Ulquiskor to his estate and train there. Viz meets Cadmos. He is a tutor and housekeeper, and he also meets Lenistia. She is a ruthless and efficient fighter and has a huge intellect, and she was also in a romantic relationship with Siror. Viz doesn't meet Rolucia, which is Ulquiskor's wife, because she is away most of the year. She's chosen to help the censor, so she's very much distracted by work. Viz sneaks out of his bedroom window to eavesdrop on Ulquiskor and Lenistia, and they are discussing the Anguis attack on the transvect, and they conclude that it must be the work of the leader of the Anguis, who is named Melior. Ulquiskor also says that he was vomiting for hours after waking up from being shot with the arrow. Lenistia also mentioned the correctors who draw blood from the senators. They were talking about someone that Viz didn't know, and she said he's the only new one they'd heard about in terms of them testing his blood, and he wasn't infected. Then at night, Lenistia attacks Viz. It is a test. Viz is enraged when this test is over, and he says that the academy can't take any more from him, and Lenistia should check the scars on his back. Lenistia then takes her glasses off, and both her eyes are gone and scarred over. And she says, "This is a small part of what the academy took from me." However, she can see because she imbues will around herself constantly. Unfortunately, though, she cannot remember the actual incident that blinded her. Lenistia then trains Viz in the secret labyrinth that Ulquiskor has built on his estate. It involves Viz wearing a arm bracer with movable stones that correspond to walls in the labyrinth, so he has to alter the labyrinth while Lenistia runs it or while he runs it. Then Magnus Claudius, a senator, visits Viz on the estate while Ulquiskor is away. He is the father to another student at the academy named Aequa, and she's also a high-ranked student. Viz accepts the deal with Claudius, saying that Aequa can join him to study because even though they technically know that she's a spy, she also has recent intel on the academy and can help Viz in his training. Viz suggests they get to know each other at the festival, so together they go to the festival of Joven where the Nomachia is being held. In the arena, Viz lies and says he needs to go to the toilet, and he meets up with Sedocia. Sedocia takes him to Melior, leader of the Anguis. It turns out that he is one of Viz's old advisors named Estevan, from when Viz lived in the palace of Sus. Melior then tries recruiting Viz to their rebellion, but Viz again refuses, citing the destruction that the Anguis have caused. Melior says the last words Viz's father told him, the reason that the hierarchy wiped out his family was because they fear what we know. Victims can still be enemies, is Melior's opinion. He says that anyone who cedes their will is as good as the hierarchy and can be disposed of. Before leaving, Sedocia swipes at Viz with a stylus and draws his blood. The stylus glows and then stops, and then Sedocia hands it over to Viz. She says it's protection, but she doesn't elaborate. Later on, Viz meets up again with Aequa in the arena. However, when the Nomachia begins, everything implodes. Melior announces himself to the crowd wielding a very strange power and condemns the hierarchy. There is a strange blur around him, and whoever gets close can't use will. Somehow Melior evaporates 500 people in an instant. It is the start of a arena-wide massacre. Aequa and Viz escape through the sewers. It's Viz's idea because that's just where he was. When they reach a ladder and they are both about to escape, Viz decides to turn back. He's quite confident that the only thing that can kill Melior is the stylus that Sedocia gave him. When Viz gets close to Melior and grabs him and holds the stylus to his neck, he sees a flash of a different place. Viz can't bring himself to kill him, but Melior acts and makes sure that Viz stabs him through the head. Viz passes out from the strange energy surrounding Melior and then wakes up a week after the attack. Viz is recovering at the Telemus house, and Ulquiskor comes to pay him a visit. Viz relays events and asks about Siror's death. Ulquiskor says he and Siror had will-imbued styluses that were linked, and Siror would often send coded messages messages. His last one said, Cinctus exodus worked, gate still open, more strange pre-cataclysm power, only Viridius knows. Then there was an accident at the academy resulting in Ceror's death. Viridius was involved and so was Linistia. She was injured and Ulquiskor took her in, only her memory and her eyes haven't healed. Gaius, a physician, comes to Ulquiskor's estate under the guise of treating Viz, but he takes samples of his blood, nails and hair to test him. He shows Viz a bunch of images as well, and before Viz can mask his reaction, he sees a picture of a black pyramid, and that's the image that he noticed when he grabbed Melior. He lies to Gaius, but Gaius can tell that he's lying. After this, it's time to start at the academy, and Viz arrives on Silivagus. Viridius takes Viz to his dorm, and he meets Calidus, a fellow student. Classes in the academy mimic the pyramid in the real world of the hierarchy. Viz will start, therefore, in class 7, and he's aiming for class 3. The 6 students in class 3 are the ones who participate in the Udicium at the end of the year for the title of Domitor. Calidus is showing Viz around, and when they enter the meal room, Iden from class 6 intervenes to fight Calidus. Viz steps up to protect Calidus, and Iden punches Viz in the face. Viz retaliates and punches Iden in the nose. The class 3 preceptor Niquius takes control. He already hates Viz and says his reputation of Catenicus, which he got at the Naumachia for killing the Angus leader, that won't keep him from consequences in the academy. Irodecimus, a class 3 student, also hates Viz and acts as a witness to get him expelled. But Iden, who is a foreigner to the Catanan Republic's ways, the hierarchy's ways, he accidentally accepts Viz's threefold apology, and Viz avoids expulsion. Instead, Viz's punishment is to muck out stables every single night for 2 months up to the Festival of the Ancestors. Omissa from class 3 joins him and helps muck out stables every night, and they form a tentative friendship, and then Viz also forms a friendship with Calidus. After a short time, Viz moves up to class 6. During the mealtime though, Eannex rejects Viz sitting with fellow class 6 students, and they all follow in his stead. It ends up just being Viz and Iden sitting at a table, and Viz leaves, sitting with Calidus instead. Then class 6 practice running the labyrinth. Viz is paired up with Iden, and he realizes that Iden is speaking an officially dead language called Cimmerian. They are the only pair of the entire class to make it successfully through the labyrinth, but the preceptor Dultatus disqualifies them because speaking a foreign language is against the rules. Because of an old family feud the preceptor had with the Telemus family, he's ranking Viz the worst in the class, so he can't progress to class 3. Later at lunch, Calidus is explaining some numbers about the hierarchy that he learned from his father. His father works for the census, which is under the governance pyramid, and they therefore handle all of the information in the hierarchy. Calidus says that the hierarchy's pyramid is incredibly skewed by numbers. Viz, seeing an opportunity, sneaks out to the ruins. He finds a room with bodies pierced by obsidian swords, and their eyes are all removed. In this room, he brushes his hand on a metal plate, and 3 shimmering landscapes appear. Then, eerily, all of the bodies that are pinned to the wall with swords come alive, and they are chanting something in unison. That chant is, Obitium is lost, do not open the gate. Synchronius is death. Viz manages to escape as Viridius and Marcus turn up in the forest. He's hiding nearby. They go to investigate who triggered the ruins, and on his climb back over the wall into the academy, Viz cuts his palm open. At their dorm, Iden is awake, but he covers for Viz returning. Shaken by what he saw, Viz ends up telling Iden what he saw at the ruins, and Iden says teaching him the common language will mean his silence. The two form a tenuous alliance. Then it's time for the Festival of the Ancestors, and Viz boards a transvect to get there. Surprisingly, Aequa, Omissa and Indal all come to sit with him too. Ulquiskor and Linistia meet up with him on the other side, and Viz debriefs about the ruins. He also requests a will-imbued grapple from Ulquiskor before he departs at sunset. Then the Telemus family arrive for the festival, and Relucia, Ulquiskor's wife, is also with them. Viz recognizes her though, it's Sedotia. Viz and Sedotia, or Relucia, go for a walk together. Relucia still intends to use Viz for the Angus's purposes after the academy, and that he should just keep doing what he was doing. Viz asks whether the Angus will destroy all the Aurora Columnae, but only the princeps know where they all are. Relucia says no, they'll remove all of the hierarchy oppressors and start over. But Viz counters that they'll just become the new princeps. They'll become the new senators. He says if all you're trying to do is change who's in control, then you don't really want to change anything. When returning to the academy, Viz jumps off the transvect into the ocean after passing the seawall so he can swim to shore and explore the ruins. He finds a large curved structure, and inside an elevator elevator takes him to a platform. Then a spectre appears, instructing that Viz needs a bracer on his arm to pass a test. This test will lead him to the entrance, and the test is the labyrinth, which is the same at the academy. He asks the spectre, what happens if I pass the test? And it says, you will go through the gate to Obidium and Lucium, but not be allowed to remain here. Synchronisium is reserved for leadership alone. Viz returns the bracer to the spectre. He doesn't have time to do the test now anyway. He's looking from where they're standing to the clear path ahead to the entrance, and he says, why can't he just walk to the entrance now? The spectre says that remnants guard the way, and in a demonstration he walks up to the gate, and shadowy remnant figures tear him apart limb from limb. Viz leaves the way he came in. He's exhausted though, and on the way back to the transfect he stops a bit to rest, and he encounters an alupi, which is like a giant wolf cub. It is injured and in pain, so when he approaches and tries to help it, it bites him, but he manages to save it, and jokingly he names the alupi cub Diago. Viz then swims back out to sea, and using a will-imbued locator that Ulkiskor gave to him, he manages to tread water under where the transvect will come through, and a will-imbued cuff drags him back up onto the transvect, almost like a form of magnetism, and he makes it back to the academy. It turns out one of Class 4 died at the Festival of the Ancestors, so there is now an open spot for Viz to take. Dultartus blocks him though and makes it difficult for him to move up, suggesting a duel between Ionix and Viz, and only the winner will move up into Class 4. Amissa and Iden help Viz train with the Amethyst armor before the duel, so a suit of armor hovers in front of you, and the light wood panels you wear means the armor mimic your movements. Ionix is incredibly skilled in the duel, but Viz manages to score 2 hits. Unfortunately, the armor is rigged. Desperate to win and move up into Class 4, otherwise if he doesn't, Ulkiskor will put Viz in a sapper, so he throws his sword at Ionix's armor and tackles the armor as well, smashing it to pieces. Viz wins with brute force, and in front of everyone, Preceptor Tida says that he's moved into Class 5. I meant Class 5 before, not Class 4, but after moving to Class 5, he then very quickly moves into Class 4 anyway. Calidus then warns him that students from both Classes 3 and 4 in the recent years have died. His father told him about it and shared census data, which would be illegal if the hierarchy found out about it. Viz continues tutoring Iden in common. It turns out that before the academy, Iden was in a sapper for a whole year because he killed 3 Praetorians. These are 3 highly trained individuals of Sextus status wielding razors. Class 4 then practice running the labyrinth, and Class 3 watch. Viz pairs with Aequa, and then after their run, Indel approaches Viz and asks him if he would like to come to his summer home over the vacation that's coming up. It turns out his summer home is the island of Seuss, which is Viz's old childhood home where his family were murdered by the hierarchy. Before the summer break though, there is the festival of Platuna. He has to sneak away, but the Fourths invite him to go with them. However, he manages to find a way to break apart from them and meet up with Sedocia or Relucia. Aequa is also suspicious of him at this point. Relucia confirms that Viz must go to the island of Seuss with Indel because the senators are meeting there, and she wants him to eavesdrop on their meeting and report back information to her. After meeting with Relucia, Viz waits and then follows her when she leaves. She meets with a scar-faced man, and they talk about a ship being a small price to pay for a pre-cataclysm weapon. The scar-faced man then demonstrates an ability. It's either time travel or teleportation. There's a thrum, he disappears, and then he's coming through the door again. Then upon returning to the others at the festival, Viz is attacked by 2 men in an alley. At the last moment though, Aequa and Preceptor Skytus appear. It turns out the ambush was a ruse initiated by Aequa because she thought that Viz was using will at the academy. She sought to prove it, and she is punished by being thoroughly wrong, going from the first ranked in Class 4 to the bottom ranked in Class 4. Now it's the summer break, and Viz, Amissa, Indel and Belly all go with Indel to his summer vacation home. Viz almost panics when he sees Fadrik, which is one of his father's old advisors, but Fadrik does not react to seeing Viz again. One night Amissa goes swimming, and after hearing about it from Indel, Viz panics and runs to her. He knows that near the lagoon there is a rip that drags you out to sea, and he manages to save Amissa, and the two end up sleeping that night in a cave, and Amissa kisses Viz and says finally. Ulkiskor is at the island of Seuss for the senator meeting, and he basically threatens Viz. He says that his recent trip to the ruins wasn't enough to gather information, and if he doesn't get more information and do better, then he will end up in a sapper. He basically forces Viz to do the labyrinth, even though those spectres were torn apart. Ulkiskor just doesn't care. He wants answers about his brother. Then in the evening, using secret passageways that he ran through as a child, he eavesdrops on the senators for Relucia. It turns out that military helped the Anguis attack at the Namakea. Now military are providing a ship called the Narvisalis, and they're also providing weapons. After exiting the secret tunnels, Viz finds Fadrique in his room. Fadrique did recognize him and they share memories of family. Fadrique shows Viz a room in the secret tunnels where he spirited away a lot of Viz's childhood items and memories, including some ships that Viz carved when he was 11. All of the ships are there and have his family's name carved on them, except the one that he did for himself. The next day at the beach, Indel sits down next to Viz. He accuses Viz of being too familiar here, and Viz says that he was the son of an advisor to cover the fact that he's actually the Prince of Seuss in the royal family. Indel says, "Don't worry, I'm good at keeping secrets," and Viz counters with, "So am I." Amissa told Viz that Indel was defecting and leaving military after graduation and going to religion instead. He plans to do this because he hates his father. Now, after the summer vacation and back at the academy, everybody knows about Viz and Amissa's relationship. Calidus also finally tells him what's going on with him and Belly. It turns out that when Calidus first started at the academy, his father paid for a spot for him in class 3. He had a crush on Belly and he trusted her and told her about the census data, showing her census documents that people were being killed at the academy. He'd stolen these documents from his father in governance to prove it though, and Belly ended up keeping those documents and using them as blackmail. She forced him to defect into class 7 and now she's pressing him for more information. Viz thinks on it and he has an idea of how to both help Calidus and advance himself to class 3. Viz challenges Belly to a strategy game called Foundation. She can't really refuse because she's staked her whole reputation at the academy on being good at it. Viz says that if he wins, he will take her spot in class 3. Halfway through the game, Belly's confidence wanes and she sees that she can't win. Before the onlookers realize that Belly has lost, Viz suggests that they do a deal. They call a break and Belly goes to get the paperwork that belongs to Calidus's father, and in agreement she's expecting that Viz ties the game with her. Instead though, he annihilates her in punishment for her betrayal of Calidus. Viz then rises to class 3. Weeks then pass of Viz training and practicing the labyrinth, and then out of spite Dultatus makes the Udicium happen early so Viz can't rise in rank any higher. All students competing in the Udicium from classes 3 and 4 have to choose 2 other students to participate with them in a team. The Udicium, like I said before, is a contest of reputation and ranking, and the victor of the Udicium must obtain the Heart of Jovan, which is a stone that needs to go back into the statue in its rightful place. If the student replacing the statue is from class 3, they will become Domitor and those in class 3 will be ranked at the top of their class. However, if another teammate replaces it, they will receive the reward that Viridius has privately offered them. To participate with him, Viz chooses Calidus and Iden, but after talking with Viridius, Iden changes his mind and is incredibly apologetic to Viz, but Viz understands. Viz asks Ayequa instead to be on his team. She's absolutely gobsmacked, but Viz says the reason he's asking is because her apology earlier about him being beaten up in the alley was genuine, and plus if they win it will help her standing again in class 4. She accepts, and on the day of the Udicium they are all given tracking medallions to wear around their necks. If any of these trackers are broken, it means they are disqualified from the Udicium. They are also all given trackers which they must swallow. The students that ranked higher in their classes during the year are given extra medallions so that they can track the lower ranking students, which gives them easy access to eliminate people. Each team also has a pair of sexti guards. At the beginning of the Udicium, Viz throws up his internal tracker. On day 1, Iroh and Belly ambush Viz's team. Ayequa defects and joins them, but she never truly joined them and she comes back to untie Calidus and Viz. Their new plan becomes steal a tracking plate from the sexti guards that are following Iroh and Belly. Ayequa pretends to rejoin Iroh and Belly and be part of their team. Viz and Calidus though sneak up on the sexti to steal their tracking plate. Calidus performs a distraction and Viz manages to steal the tracking plate and a cloak. They do all split up, but they've agreed to meet again later at a specific point. During this time, Viz intends to sneak away and run the labyrinth for Ulkiskor. Otherwise, after the Udicium, he'll be put in a sapper. After Viz crosses the river and is going to enter the structure that has the labyrinth inside it, he is jumped by an Alupi. The Alupi knocks Viz's knife away and growls at him, but ultimately does not attack. It circles him and leaves, and Viz realizes that it's the same Alupi that he helped save 6 months ago. The Alupi growls at him when he enters the ruins to take the labyrinth test, but ultimately leaves him be. While Viz is running the test, he is successful, but during the maze, he encounters Belly's torn up body. In a chamber after completing the test, he encounters these bronze blades protruding from the floor in a circle. Viz knows enough Vetusian to partly translate what is written written, and so he reads the inscription around the blades. It says, "Herein lies the way to Lucium and Obitium, offered to all those who would contest our extinction. Know that none who accept this task may remain. The burden of togetherness or harmony is reserved for the one who seals the authors of the war from this world. Only he may exceed the hobbled capabilities of this duplication. He and he alone must risk harmony to make the great sacrifice." Viz doesn't understand fully what it means, but he enters the circle. When he does, immediately he can't breathe and he rises into the air. He's writhing in pain, the blades ripple crimson, and Viz experiences a relentless crushing feeling upon his body. A force tears him in every direction and he passes out. Upon waking, his tunic is dark over his left arm, and when he pulls it back, he can see writing that says "wait" in capital letters. Then "complete the journey, warrior" echoes all around him. Viz's arm starts to sting and he looks back down. The letters R and U start appearing and he decides, oh, that means run, and he runs. He returns to the labyrinth and picks up the bracer. He adjusts the maze for exiting and sprints out. However, before he can exit the chamber completely, bodies end up standing in his way, chanting "complete the journey, warrior." Viz charges for the exit anyway, and the Alupi Diago helps him by attacking the bodies nearby. Viz escapes, but he's too slow in closing the door behind him, and several of the bodies escape after. They pursue the pair into the forest. Diago then rips a few of the pursuing bodies apart, and they are empty-eyed human husks. They focus their attacks on him. Viz takes down another man but is tackled and bitten by another. He fights them off and breaks their neck. It seems like the only way to stop them. Viz then reunites with Calidus and Aequa, and he says the bite on his arm is an Alupi bite. The three split up using the tracking plate to pursue the heart. Something is odd though, and they find the different safety teams of the Sexti. They are in a shallow grave with smashed heads. Unfortunately, the preceptor Skytus is one of them. Aequa and Viz are reeling at this discovery. If there was public news of the deaths at the Udicium, then religion's reputation would suffer and military would gain. Viz concludes that the Anguis are involved. The new mission is to warn everybody that is still left alive, which includes Indal and Amissa, and also to find Calidus. Aequa and Viz end up splitting up to find everybody and warn them, and Viz finds Indal first, explaining the risks to him. He also tells Indal that he knows that he would defect to religion. He says that Amissa told him. He also warns Indal to be careful of his father after what he overheard at Seuss. Indal says that he never told Amissa he was defecting and hands over Amissa's tracker to Viz. They part ways and then Viz finds Aequa again, but mid-conversation, Viz feels this weird pulsing sensation that he can somehow pinpoint in physical space. He and Aequa hide and two men show up. They are angry at finding the tracking necklaces on the ground. One of the men says it doesn't matter how they know, we just have to get as many of them as we can. Aequa understandably is suspicious of Viz's good ears. Viz then sneaks into the fortress where the heart is, and it's also where Amissa is hiding. Before he can come across Amissa, he encounters the scar-faced man that earlier met with Relucia. It seems that he is more so the leader of the Anguis than Relucia is. He also oddly refers to Viz as kin, and he confirms that military and the Anguis are behind the desks at the Udicium. He says that military know the island of Solivigus is special, but that whoever is newly in control of the island will never find the gate. He says Viridius will bury it before anyone else has a chance to find it. The man then warps in front of Viz, vanishes, and appears behind him with a knife to his throat. He says that he'll go ahead and kill Amissa now if Viz doesn't go and win the heart. He's forcing Viz to do this because the Anguis have ensured that Viz becomes the Domitor, so they can therefore place him wherever they want him to be after the Udicium concludes. The scar-faced man, before disappearing, also says, "One last piece of advice, young man, you should prepare yourself to lose that arm. None of us get out without scars." Viz continues forward and there is a Anguis man guarding the heart of Joven. Before he can step up to confront him, Viz notices that Amissa's tracking light is hiding nearby. The Sextus, who hates Viz for his title at the Naumachia, launches forward to kill Viz. In the scuffle, the Sextus punches a wall and loosens rock. He then throws a chunk of it at Viz and tears through his tunic and his injured arm. But before the Sextus can kick Viz off the top of the fortress, he ends up falling forward and dropping the heart instead and going over the side. It turns out that Amissa, who has will-imbued black eyes, has stabbed him from behind with an obsidian blade. She was shocked that this Sextus was genuinely trying to kill Viz because in her mind she thinks that this is still a contest and doesn't know about the Anguis infiltrating it. But then she examines Viz's arm and sees the bite and her voice turns quite strange. She threatens him and she says, "You need to give me the heart." Viz drops it at her feet and says, "You didn't have to threaten me." Then he realizes that she's weeping and she steps forward sword and throws a dagger which embeds itself in his gut, and he falls over the side of the fortress. As he's falling, the heart snaps into his hand again and he lands in the river. Somehow, impossibly, he wakes, choking water. It turns out that Diago dragged him from the river and his stab wound wasn't as deep as he initially thought it was. It seeps blood and he is in shock, saying, "Emissa tried to kill me." He can't really believe it and he drags himself up to make his way towards Calidus's position to warn him. Unfortunately, he is too late and Calidus has been attacked and partly torn up. They have a conversation and Viz promises Calidus that Viz will tell Calidus's father why Calidus's ranking suffered without including Belly's name in the story. Calidus dies as Viz carries him into the academy. In front of Viridius and all of the students remaining, Viz lays Calidus's body down. He then replaces the heart of Jovan and says, "I'm going to make sure you burn for this," before he passes out from his own injuries. He wakes again in the infirmary and his left arm has been surgically removed. Viridius is waiting for him when he wakes. Viridius says that Viz's blood has been tainted and if the wrong people see it, they will kill him. Viridius says, "You ran a labyrinth in the ruins. The writing on your arm, was that help getting out?" There's no way around it, so Viz has to confirm it. And Viridius says that Emissa saw Viz's injury and the blood and she thought he was past saving. Viridius implores Viz to choose defecting to religion because they need to stop the next cataclysm from happening. Viz refuses and officially chooses the censor. This is where all the hierarchy information flows and where Calidus's father works. Viz says that Viridius was supposed to be protecting the students, and Viz says, "But you've been using us. You've been sending students to their deaths. I'll listen to what you have to say, but we are a long, long way from working together." Viridius replies and says, "Then for now that will have to be enough." After Viridius leaves, Viz notices the table next to his hospital bed. There is a carved ship on it and he pulls back the tab in the bottom and it says Diago. It's the same ship that he carved when he was a child. Then the story ends and a new chapter opens called Synchronism. There's a burning sensation, it wanes, and then Viz wakes up. The shadowed bronze blades glow all around him, and instead there's writing on the wall. This writing says, "Sealed against the tools of the enemy after the rending. The passage to Lucium requires a toll to ensure validity." Viz presses his hands to the stone. In a flash, his left shoulder sears with pain, his arm is gone, and he's suddenly surrounded by white columns and snow. Two people rush to help him and they say, "Traveler, another from your world is coming." And then the third Viz wakes up in a circle of bronze blades. A man nearby says, "We don't have much time. Welcome to Obitium. Did Viridius send you?" He says, "My name is Seeror. I don't know how much you know, but we have 2 minutes to save you back in Res. So you need to trust me and come out of there now. You've been copied, the same way the world was thousands of years ago in the war against the Concurrents. It's how you got here." Viz stumbles out of the bladed circle and Seeror hands him a knife. He says, "The first thing we need to do is get a message to you back in Res, so you don't move out of the gate just yet. Pull back your sleeve, Viz." And that concludes The Will of the Many by James Islington. Before you read The Strength of the Few, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.